Greetings, colleagues. Bulavinaka from Suva, and very warm welcome to all our colleagues and invited guests to this call. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation to join us today on this session that's titled Oceania Resilience to Climate Crisis and COVID-19, Grassroot Solutions and Blockchain Technology. And this session is hosted by Oxfam in the Pacific. My name is Kessa, and I work for Oxfam as the Mel and Knowledge Coordinator for a Pacific Climate Change Influencing Project. And today I'll be taking the role as your moderator for this session. So with only 5 minutes before we officially start, we would like to just go over some key housekeeping announcements just to ensure that we have a clear flow of what we will be doing in today's program. So following this, we will have a brief welcome and introductory remarks before we begin with the formal program. Now, this session is divided into two plenaries. The first focusing on feminist solutions to the climate crisis, and the second on blockchain technology. So in the first plenary, we will hear from three dynamic women speakers who I will introduce very shortly. And following that, we will move to the second plenary, and we will hear from our fourth speaker in our lineup. And each of these plenaries will run for about 20 minutes with questions and answers at the end of the two plenary sessions. And the question and answer session will go for an allocated time of 10 minutes. In between the segments, the plenaries and sessions, we have also prepared a few videos that we will share as we move through this session, just to ensure that the sessions are interactive and innovative as well. And so just a key reminder to our colleagues, we would really appreciate that you check that your microphones are on mute, unless of course if you're speaking. And if you do want to speak, please raise your hand or use the chat box, and we will invite you to ask your question or say your comments. Or if you prefer, you can also send us a message on chat, and we can read out your questions or comments for you. Also, we would like to just mention that we would like to record, well, we've already recorded this session, and if that's okay with you, just please indicate your consent by giving a thumbs up, clicking on the thumbs up emoji, or just by saying okay on the chat. So with that being said, I guess we are now ready to begin. Warm greetings and Bulavinaka, namaste to everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. It's drizzling here in the capital city in Suva, and we're on public holiday, except for me. I'm sitting here in the office facilitating this session. Yeah, it's a festive holiday for us here in Suva, in Fiji. We're celebrating the Festival of Lights, which is Deepawali. And so happy Diwali to all of you as well. We're delighted to have you join us in this space where we will explore grassroots Pacific solutions to the climate and COVID-19 crisis. With COP26 happening simultaneously to this, it is clear that the climate crisis is not one to be isolated from the COVID-19 pandemic. And in fact, COVID-19 has uncovered many inequalities and injustices faced by us who are bearing the brunt of the climate crisis. So leaders have been challenged to be more innovative inclusive, and creative in their approach to finding solutions. And so this morning in this space, Oxfam, in partnership with local CSOs that work tirelessly at the grassroots level, will present to you two key proposed solutions. One is the Pacific Feminist Solution, where women from all walks of life will share their stories of resilience as they work in communities to mainstream climate solutions using inclusive and feminist approaches. And two, we will also look at blockchain technology, drawing from lived experiences in Vanuatu using the cashless system for humanitarian response and recovery work. Therefore, we encourage you to please participate in this session by asking our guests your questions during the session, or even just contributing your comments or views, as your reflections can help strengthen and enrich our discussions. And so before we begin with our first plenary, please allow us to share with you a short video to help set the scene for today's session.
Where do we go from here? Why are we even here? Opportunities don't come easy. Inequalities fueled by the system. As the sun gets hotter, none of us is safe anymore. As the sun gets hotter, none of us is safe anymore. The islands are calling, climate change is real. Families are suffering, held against their will. Time is slipping like sands from my head. We silently weapon, it's never the same anymore. The toxicity not only runs in the seas, but in humanity as well. The air becomes heavier to breathe, to breathe.
I know they ain't deaf, I know they ain't blind. Why can't they admit it's a threat to mankind? Ignorance, commitments, destruction's insane. It's always too late if we're ignoring today. Live for tomorrow even though it seems wrong. We only got one life, one planet to call home. Hope the leaders understand the weight of this song. We're on Mother Earth's side. Which side you're on? Come on.
The islands are calling, climate change is real.
picking up, yes. As the sea level rising up, no. My heritage now under threats like never before. If you may not stand up now, then who now best stand up for you, me? And we must act and take action now. We can't go run like a refugee. Represent the Pacific, that's my island home. Time to make the necessary moves, here we go. Politics aside, we don't want no more ecocide. Let's fight the climate crisis facing planet Earth. Calling out to the global community. Time for you to speak openly on climate change.
The islands are calling. Climate change is real. Families are suffering, held against their will. Time is slipping like sex from rocket. We suddenly weapon. It's never the same anymore. The toxicity not only runs in the seas, but in humanity as well. The air becomes heavier to breathe,
Powerful message there from our very own Pacific homegrown artists, Camila ODD18 and Kazin, all the way from the Solomon Islands, and featuring our very own climate activists, the Pacific Islands students fighting climate change, reminding us there that climate change is real. Now, as stated earlier, we will now begin our first plenary. And for this first session, we will focus on feminist solutions to the climate crisis. And to help unpack this, we have three incredible female speakers. First, we have Grace Pico, who is currently the coordinator of Rock Valley Community in the Solomon Islands. She also holds the position of chair lady for sustainability and marketing for the Solomon Islands Women in Business Association, and is a mentor for International Girls Arise under the YWCA, and also an active member of the Solomon Islands Climate Action Network. And second, we have Anna Malia, who is a first-year law student at the University of the South Pacific in Tonga. She is a youth ambassador and trainee at the Talitha project, and she is also a youth climate ambassador for CARE. And our final speaker for this plenary is Melvina Vo'ua, who is the president of the International Association of Youth and Students for Peace in the Solomon Islands. She's also working as a part-time climate change officer for people with disabilities. Our speakers will attempt to address two key questions. And the key questions are, how does your community engagement promote climate justice and disaster resilience? And how does gender transformative approaches and social inclusion contribute to the 1.5 degree world that we want to see? And so welcome everyone, welcome ladies. And I wonder if we could start with you, Grace. Grace, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Grace from Solomon Islands. And I'll start off with the questions. Yeah, how does the community engage, promote climate justice and disaster resilience? Yes, thank you for being part of this this morning. I'm really blessed for what under the Oxfam program you are helping us women that we can come in and to share our stories. Thank you, Vinaka. Yeah, today I'm going to just talk of what I'm in the community here in Solomon Islands. As you hear from my background that I'm the coordinator of Rock Valley. Yes, as the video that we see today, that's what I'm going to speak, and some things about that we as mothers or in our community or myself as a leader, where I see that we have to help out or promote what is about climate justice and disaster resilience. Our community have lived the experience of the impacts of climate change. And climate change is real. Aside from the sea, life rights, our agricultural system are being affected, resulting in poor harvest from our garden, difficulties in accessing water to provide for our families, and generate income that we are unable to provide school fees for our children. And with this COVID-19 crisis, this had further add to the challenge we are already facing. It is through our engagement in CC spaces has provided the information, capacity to be able to adapt to CC such as backyard farming, planting resilient crops to be able to adapt, and we are supported by them for technical assistance. And yes, in our Pacific country, we know that we all experience that. And in the community level, as a mother, for family, how we see that it's very difficult. In the community where I live, we really faced, we were suffering, we are suffering from what we've been going through in the COVID-19. And here, as for the approaches to create opportunities for women to actively involve and build their capacity to challenges inequalities in their communities. And social inclusion, process of improving the qualities, ability, and opportunity and dignity of those disadvantaged on basis of their identity contributes to the 1.5 degrees Celsius world that we want to see. We women will be the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. As mothers, our priority will be our families, our children, and we have the passion, heart of care. And so if joining feminists around the Pacific, we share the same stories. Our engagement in these spaces has allowed to share our stories, experiences in an inclusive approach, singing the same song. As mothers, we are already vulnerable, especially with climate change. Already, we are experiencing hardships in accessing water. We have to walk long hours in the heat and rain of the weather to reach medical services, especially young mothers, the communities. We are vulnerable to domestic violence in our homes and communities, and already we are experiencing DV. We have to work long hours in garden to sell our products at the nearest market, or only to come back home and being bashed by partners because of taking so much time that we weren't able to provide food for our families. And so while we are giving the opportunity to build our knowledge and capacity, we are joining hands together with other women around the Pacific to push for our 1.5 degrees Celsius so that we ensure that our children and grandchildren have a better future. The key messages that I wish to amplify on this page: we need to acknowledge the needs and the rights of everyone in the community, be it women, men, youths, children, elderly, or people with special needs. We need community cooperation, collaboration to help build a resilient community. To the world leaders, the Pacific people, as we are the small island states, often been affected by intense cyclones and droughts, loss of coastal infrastructure and land, loss of our coral reefs, mangroves, failure of subsistence, crops, coastal fisheries, and the spread of certain disease and invasive species assist us in adapting to the impacts to be able to build our resilience. Climate justice must be all, for all, not for some. Make the right decisions to protect the rights of women, people with disabilities, young people, and the elderly. Planning for climate change, development, and infrastructure must empower all people in order to achieve climate change. Climate finance must be accessible by those who most need it. Countries in the global north must build capacity in Pacific island nations to access the needed resources to fight climate change for diversity in strength. Recognize the value of the biodiversity in both mitigating climate change and adaptation efforts. That's my key message for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace, for that powerful reinforcement, just reminding us again on the lived experiences and the lived realities that women and children in our communities face as a result of the climate crisis. And of course, emphasizing as well on how women in the Pacific are standing together in solidarity to try and address this problem. For those of you that have just joined us, Grace has just spoken to us, and she represents the Solomon Islands Women in Business Association. And the Solomon Islands Women in Business Association was established in 2004 with the goal to promote, develop, and empower women's participation in the private sector. And thank you so much, Grace. It's exciting to see that climate change and social inclusion is weaved delicately in the private sector space through your work and passion. So thank you, Grace, for that. And now I would like to pivot to you, Anna. What are your thoughts on the two questions at hand? Welcome, Anna. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Malolele, as we say here in the Kingdom of Tonga. I hope you guys can hear me, and please do not hesitate to let me know if you guys cannot. Firstly, I apologize. I do not have a PowerPoint presentation to share with you all this morning, and nor do I have for more information, meaning statistics and stuff. But from my end, it'll all just be an 18-year-old speaking from the heart. So please do bear with me. The effects of climate change here in Tonga, moreover in the Pacific, is, as we've heard, more visible to the human eye than ever before. Sea levels are rising, endangering low-lying islands. The temperatures are also rising, resulting in changing climate conditions. And tropical cyclones are occurring more often and have become more stronger than before. These are amongst many effects of climate change here in Tonga, but of course, this is not the first time that this is stated or reported, yet it's the same pattern of effects year after year, with the change only being that these effects and impacts are growing more dangerously every year. I have to be honest, I never knew how serious this climate crisis issue was, and I'm a bit ashamed that I didn't know more so what its impact was doing to my home island country. See, that's where the gaps lie here in Tonga. Young people and children are foreign to the subject climate change, therefore it's of no importance at all. But in my situation, it took a tropical cyclone Gita category 4 and having to live through the effects of studying in a classroom with half a roof over my head for a whole year to finally open my eyes. So I began slowly trying to play my role in fighting this climate crisis and trying to bridge the gap that I had identified. In my community, I have the privilege of leading a small church charitable organization for young children and people in between the ages of 7 to 19 years. Although our main goal and work focuses in providing services for the poor and elderly, it has also become a space and platform in which I utilize. I have this strong belief that a key concept and approach missing in my country's climate change strategies is educating our young ones on the climate crisis and empowering them to play their roles. I know for sure everyone has a role in this fight, and it is essential that we all play it regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of culture, and so forth. My little contributions to my community in the climate crisis initially started with, ironically, having movie nights with our community children. And I utilized the space to showcase documentaries on the concept of the climate crisis. Our most recent watched documentary was Seaspiracy, if anyone has watched it or not. But for me, it was essential that we showcase the realities of the climate issue, the climate crisis issues to our young ones, in hopes that it would open up a talanoa session or a platform of discussion. And it most certainly did. And some of the most key things that we discussed amongst us children and young ones is that we are living through these realities every day here in Tonga. From there, we all have been empowered and encouraged to fight. We conduct community cleanups every month in homes of those elderly who live alone and cannot do it themselves. We are finding new ways in which we can recycle and reuse everyday equipment and resources in our homes. And in partnership with our Department of Climate Change Tonga, my church community and I aim in looking after our oceans and keeping it plastic and rubbish free by having coastal cleanups every month. In partnership with Care Australia and having been appointed the role of climate ambassador, I advocate on the issue of the climate crisis via social media. Through my role as a youth ambassador at Talitha Project, we conduct trainings for young girls and women on various life skills and ensuring the safety nets and mental well-being of these girls and women during crisis and pandemic. With my role in partnership with Habitat for Humanity, I'm a part of conducting trainings in villages of how to build safer homes that ensures it could withstand through the storms in partnership with another organization called Caritas Tonga. I know for sure that what I'm doing in my community and engaging with my community is still not enough. And I know for sure that there is still more that I can do, and it is forever a learning process for myself. Young people, in my opinion, are still not fully included in this fight. And it is my wish that we are, in order for us to fully commit. I believe that some of the key some of the key messages that I wish to leave today is that our opinions and ideas as young people, and most especially as young girls, do matter because it is our fight. It is our future that is in danger, and it is our fight to take. Here in the Pacific, we have a common saying that says, although we are sinking, we are still fighting. We must all play our roles, whether big or small, to ensure that my generation have a world to live out our dreams and fulfill our potential and purposes. Lastly, I would like to leave you with, I believe that there still is hope, and we can still win this fight and solve this climate crisis. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Anna Malia, for that very passionate message, and also just sharing with us the lived experiences that you faced as a young woman advocating for climate justice in Tonga. Your statement this morning just, reminded me that our young people reinforced actually the fact that our young people, because they've lived through this crisis, they're born and bred in the crisis. They may think that the crisis is normal. It's a normal part of life, but it isn't. And so thank you so much for the little good deeds that you're doing in country, using social responsibility as a weapon to advocate and to educate our young ones. So thank you so much, Anna Malia, for sharing that with us. Now, our next speaker this morning is Melvina. Thank you so much, Melvina. Melvina will now give you the floor, addressing the two key questions that we've asked from the two speakers. How does your community engagement promote climate justice and disaster resilience? And how does gender transformative approaches in social inclusion contribute to the 1.5-degree world that we want to see? So welcome again, Melvina. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today for this very important session. First of all, thank you, Oxfam, for hosting this very important session. And I would like to congratulate the fellow speakers for your very powerful presentation. And thank you also, listeners, for joining us for this session. So today, I'm going to speak on behalf of people living with disability in the Solomon Islands, and I'm going to highlight a few important importance on how our community is engaging to promote climate justice and resilience. So yeah, it has been a year and a half now since taking up the role of climate change officer for people with disability organization here in Solomon Islands. And these have been made possible by the support of the Australian government through the Pacific Disability Forum, PDF, as a regional umbrella body for few disability organization in the Pacific region. So People with Disabilities Solomon Island organization was established in 1990s, to promote and advocate for disability issues here in the Solomon Island. And Solomon Island is also one of the most vulnerable island nations in the Pacific to the impacts of climate change. And the 10% of its population is people living with disabilities. The disabilities are often left behind due to various barriers that may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. PWDSI has been engaging in a field research coordinated by Pacific Disability Forum to provide evidence of the impacts of climate change on people with disabilities, their vulnerability, opportunities for adaptation and building resilience to climate change impacts. Through that, we have managed to participate with few relevant climate change government ministries and stakeholders to address and advocate for disability inclusion in their adaptation and mitigation policies. And one of our partner is Oxfam through the Solomon Island Climate Action Network. Yes, so PWDSI has been engaging with the Solomon Island Climate Network Action that allows us the space to engage in various climate change activities such as awareness and advocacy to disability schools in Honiara, and participating in monthly meetings and learning workshops, and influencing such as climate justice symposium and climate change conferences and events like this, which has really empowered us to continue our climate change work in our vulnerable young women and girls with disability. It is important for women and young girls with disability to be aware of climate change because we are part of the proportion of the population who are considered the most vulnerable to various climate change issues. Given the different types of impairments that people with disability have, it's important to be aware of climate change issues, to be able to determine what our needs are, to be able to build our capacity, to become resilient, to empower us to influence national policies that concerns our needs. So climate change issue will is further added to the existing challenges of accessibility for women and young girls with disability to access fresh water, food source, basic health service, economic services, and information for which in the past it's already a challenge. And with current issues of sea level rise, extreme events, it's further added strain to the existing challenges. Little has been done, which is not enough to really tackle the impacts of climate change on people with disability here in the Solomon Islands and in the region. As a young woman, girl living with disability, this traditional belief that we cannot actively engage in our homes or community has closed off opportunities of our involvement. We are being seen as dependent or a care or charity case, and that limits our chances of accessing information, education, finance, decision-making, and accessibility to infrastructure. For climate change, our partnership in climate change work has given the opportunity to have voice and share our challenges we face that make us feel empowered or included. So with those highlights, I would like to share some of the key messages that I wish to be amplified on this space. These are climate change should not be treated as business as usual by developed countries. Rather, need to live up to their emission targets to keep this earth safe, not going beyond 1.5 degrees. Include disability in adaptation and mitigation plans. All national policies on climate adaptation and mitigation must be inclusive. Recognize the needs of its impairments in order to fully participate in various advocacy campaign spaces. It's a time to put our voices together, leaving no one behind, to fight this global crisis and create a safe and better world for all humanity. For nothing about us is without us. Thank you everyone for your time and listening, and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melvina Vinakwakalegu, for that powerful message from you, emphasizing and reinforcing the need to recognize people with disability in our resilience efforts, and also the need to recognize that disability when it comes to climate change and the COVID-19 crisis is not homogeneous, and that we need to understand the different impairments and how we need to address the various branches of disability in our work on climate justice. So thank you once again, Melvina, for bringing that to light and for reminding us that nothing without us will move this work on climate justice forward. So thank you so much once again, Melvina, for that. Now, colleagues, I'm well aware that we are running short for time. There's so much that has been shared this morning, and on our program, we're supposed to share a short video from Bimba and NAMOM and the Kiribati Disability Association, but I will share the link with you on the chat, and you can watch that in your spare time. You know, just bringing to light some of the lived realities of people with disability and LGBTQ communities in small atoll islands. And so I'll share that with you shortly on the chat, but we will now proceed to our second plenary, and our second plenary focuses on blockchain technology. And if that is a new term for some of us, please rest assured that our next speaker will emphasize and elaborate on what blockchain technology is. And our speaker is from Oxfam and has been with Oxfam Vanuatu for close to 4 years now. And he is the Cash Transfer Program Manager. Kalua, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to speak to us today. And Kalua will be answering 2 key questions. And the questions are, what approach does blockchain technology adopt to promote climate justice and disaster resilience in the Pacific? And what is the relationship between community engagement and innovative technology in relation to disaster resilience and climate justice? So welcome again, Kalua. You now have the floor. Kalua, I think you're on mute.
You're muted.
Sorry. Good morning, moderator. Good morning, my fellow colleagues speakers. Thank you for the impressive presentations that have been presented to us this morning. And good morning, everyone who joined in this presentation. Referring to the 2 questions that have been asked by our moderator, I will address those questions at the end of my conclusion. Just a quick content of my presentation. I will give a brief introduction and will be showing a 15-minute documentary film. And I'll conclude that based on the 2 questions that have been asked by the moderator. For those of us who don't know already, Pacific Islands have become hubs of innovation, where climate strategies are piloted and refined to inform adaptation and humanitarian efforts globally. Pacific Island ecosystems are being degraded by pollution, overfishing, and unsustainable development. They also increasingly face severe climate impacts, including sea level rises, changing temperature, and rainfall patterns. Those impacts result in changes in food and water, security, loss of identity, climate-induced migration, and threats of sovereignty. In response, Oxfam in Pacific had been leading a climate humanitarian strategies, often in combining traditional practices and cutting-edge technology to build the resilience of community, especially those who have been most vulnerable after a disaster, and private sector in the face of increasing climate risk. So the short documentary film you're about to see captures the real tangible impact the innovative blockchain technology through the cash transfer program had on the beneficiaries, which the most vulnerable after a disaster. You will also learn the rationality behind why Oxfam thinks this humanitarian delivery of aid is more practical and suiting the need and the context of the Pacific region. And this is one of the consortium approach that we use. We have 3 INGOs, we have local partners and private sectors who have been involved in this innovative response in a way that when we're talking about resilience, not around climate change only, but also around the knowledge of sharing around the innovative unblockers to build the capacity of the partners. Private sectors plays a critical role in this humanitarian response, as you will learn throughout the short documentary. So the cash transfer approach from Oxfam point of view is a bridge between immediate response, coordinated by NDMO, which is the National Disaster Management Office in Vanuatu, and the long-term recovery of the communities. I will now leave you to watch the short documentary film, afterwards I will make my conclusion. Thank you, moderator.
Me thank you too much where you've like you one cat me, where me really helping me. Lo side plokakai from me no walk, me walk lo morins, me come town, mama blow me tet, in a long time man blow me tet, make him say, COVID-19 he block him place blow walk back in, make him say me stop pay, really helping me too much.
My name is Sandra Antege Hart. My role with Oxfam is the Blockchain Innovations and Cash Transfer Lead for the Pacific region. What I do is I merge humanitarian cash transfer programs, which is the delivery of payments to people affected by disasters, with blockchain technology. What we've effectively done is we have sourced and co-designed a blockchain platform together with the startup Senpo. What we've tried to do in this program, which is why we call it unblocked cash, is we're kind of unblocking those barriers to delivering cash to people who need it. What we've found in building up cash transfer programs in the Pacific is, although the Pacific is extremely disaster prone, the delivery of payments and the existing financial service infrastructure that allows us to give people the money that they need to purchase what they need when they need it is extremely difficult. And that infrastructure just does not reach to all of the islands in Vanuatu and across the region. By simplifying delivery, making it very automated, making it very lightweight, basically all we need is laptops, smartphones, cards, and people to run the entire program. It's allowed us to bring in dozens of NGOs, local governments, community organizations, and private sector stakeholders, not to mention almost 300 local vendors, almost 3,000 families, into a program that they otherwise would not be able to access if it was delivered traditionally. And what that means is we're building capacity for everyone, but we're also expanding the capacity of delivery by using technology.
DFAT saw this as a really good way to very quickly get money to vulnerable people suffering from the impacts of COVID-19, Tropical Cyclone Harold, and the Tanah Yasser ashfall.
I think firstly we supported the Unblocked Cash program because we knew it would work. Secondly, we were really keen to support the Unblocked Cash program because it allows the families to make the decisions with dignity about what they require and what they need to rebuild their lives and livelihoods.
Look, blow me also say unblock cash and me one look at the cheapest way to respond and me quick more and me fast. But the most important thing when me like him lehem and me transparent. I am to save look every system, more measure them, how people use money blow keta. And back again, you know, him me transparent the way that time you me make him distributions. People li kiaman, you me to you me save take him action los.
With this program, all vulnerable groups, all got self, all got money, all got cat, all got talk from, all question. Yes, mo karam want something. Well, it benefit lo want something where he come down lo roots, come down. Them back dignity, he build them back courage, he build them back confidence. Lo somebody where he left out, and this is really good.
I think it's a people with disability. So, me one way me sabi inside, me sabi yung kaja, me go down lo a store where. I got one time where me sabi walk by the local people then before. Then when me no kat one access also niya, me sabi sablo house na mo. But me no sabi kat one ting bro, kat bro local friend also niya no kat. But time me kat sablo hand bro me sabi ko bro me ko shopping bro me, then me sabi meet one friend bro me. Thank you much.
Mo time yo lam kat with me feel say one time me safe huh. So yes we got one money, you stop inside locatia. We make him say me care too from health for me. We say pay more kayo with doctor you stop him something. By time disaster you give rice with fish. Me no got any choice. Me mas kakay no now. By time katika me sabi kakay. Also me say three kind kakay ate map kala low plate. By time katika me make him feel say me healthy. Me pay mo kakay way straight lo health for me. Me want to tell people thank you Oxfam initiative where me take him.
World Vision International has a global strategic objective to ensure that all humanitarian emergency responses prioritize cash. I personally am a really big believer in that because it puts the power back in the hands of those who have been most affected by disaster to respond to their own needs. And when you empower individuals to respond to their own needs, they can recover much quicker.
Se mi station fenda mi klad. Mi help mi. After se mi help him okata round le mi vala tool widow. Sam fala liang mama we se moli neva kasem help. Sambles after uli karamol kade kam simuli yusuma uli make uli katol kakai uli kat simul something la house we sabe help mol keta sim time gata liklat you klad migam sim se community apia.
You know, the global evidence strongly demonstrates that cash transfer programming is the way, is more efficient, does give the decision making and the autonomy back to people at the community level and the household level. And for Save the Children, we believe it's the most effective approach to supporting those three global breakthroughs for children, supporting children to overcome barriers to accessing education, accessing good nutrition, and also reducing their risk to violence.
Cyclone no strong yet, me stop. The after time he come strong. Only track mas come pick him up me with el pikinini blame me move him out me la house. So next morning blame me just come back la house in Omokat or something only yes destroy Venice. A program yelbe me lo side lo carry cement lo hardware. Only sta kukum some block stop mo got some backsmen is stop it. Mr. with lo by time only finish him off all back cement le ba misa ko karem samo.
So that's the positive thing when me looking about this program. Me really come to address some specific need for either one nuclear family or an individual.
With both TC Herald and COVID, we're aware that the local business community has taken a hit, and cash transfer programs not only support families, but they allow money to flow back into the economy and support local businesses.
The role of the Vanuatu Business Resilience Council is to work with the businesses. It's vital that we establish a network of shops, transport providers, boats, etc., so that the community have all the services that they need. VBRC selected the most appropriate vendors, trained them and supported them throughout the program. At the moment we're looking after over 320 vendors across the 3 provinces.
Every Sunday, limas venda limas costa na one place we got network. Lupa mi fly save karama tol balance blokata we install phone. Then lo Monday with the Tuesday mi fly process mon payment blokata. Through lo help lo paratan partners. Asem hemna hemi main financial focal point dimi. With the one footing bank where katara li make a payment lo you make a payment through all kata.
Our role is linked with the Sempo guys who bring down the information from the dashboard on a weekly basis, They provided information to us and we translated into bank-friendly documents that go off to the 5 main commercial banks for them to initiate payment to the vendors. So there's a check and verification process that we are very diligent about. The reason why non-cash is good is because people can't lose checks. It's because people don't have to go down to the bank and stand in line for hours to cash a check. They don't have to get transport to come from their village into Luganville or into Vila or anywhere else where the banks are located to make sure the program works. I think that's one of the great things about this program is that people go to their store, get their goods, hand over their card gets debited, they walk away with their goods. They don't have to do anything extra to be part of this. It distributes the funds throughout the economy and at the end of the day it creates work for people.
Tamo yufla ki me program lo yufla go, ale mi fla got extra income now or staff for me to get plan they work.
In the Unblocked Cash program, one of the interesting things was how well businesses adapted to e-commerce. Not only were they learning to use a phone to make payments in the store, but the money was going directly to their bank accounts. And this is very new, especially in our rural communities. There's no FPOS terminals. But we found there was this great enthusiasm around banking, and it really helped with the financials for the businesses. Suddenly they were better able to save money and account for their transactions, which made the business itself better able to make decisions.
It is the first program of its kind in Vanuatu. It's massive. It's using relatively advanced technology in a nation that really only got internet about 15 years ago and mobile phones. And given all of those factors that could have derailed the program, it's gone remarkably smoothly. And so I actually think the back end has just been amazing. And it's been so incredible to see the stimulus to local vendors as well. And you can see those vendors thinking about non-emergency response opportunities with this type of technology, which is really powerful.
To be very honest, we have to promote 2 of our staff to become our junior cashier supervisor. So not only it has helped those beneficiaries, but it also has helped our staff because of course after promotion they get better pay kind of thing. We also have seen them really stepping up to make sure it gets done properly. I think it's a new thing for Vanuatu. It's a good thing for Vanuatu. Before, people are skeptical. What is this card? What doesn't have money, but you're saying there is. So now they are aware and they're very happy with it. I really think it's a game changer for Vanuatu at least.
Because it is so new and because the technology was initially unfamiliar, I think it took a while to build people's trust, from the government all the way down to recipients of the program. And I think that was something that Oxfam invested a lot of time and effort into and called on partners to support as well. And so we've been privileged to be able to work on building confidence with provincial governments with whom we already have strong relationships, but also the communities in which we work.
Pigla tangi no mo lelpet lo Oxfam we mi pin meke wan kutfla crown wo meke seta mi vle kamplo meke ma wenes folle mol criteria we by stavin lo oto weli sabe pat lo CTP meke mo seta mi vle tok pe mi vle lugol semse response lo all community lita oli work close awate mi vle mo li understandem wanem na program pa mi kofo so li sabe se pa mi kofo all vulnerability people lo community so mi look li understandem mo li tek lit lo tek mo program ya to lo community lo.
We knew it was always going to be a challenge for Oxfam and the implementing partners to ensure that communities were comfortable that some families were getting support and some families weren't. And again, I think that's a credit to Oxfam and the implementing partners that they did that community outreach and all that work with the community so they were comfortable with it and there were no issues.
Oxfam has been really clear that their mandate is to not only deliver the unblocked cash response, but also build the capacity for partners to be able to mount similar responses in the future. We were really excited to be able to get that on the ground training and learning through delivery with the technical support from Oxfam, both in terms of market analysis, infrastructure support, and then just training to individual staff members on how to operate the program with both vendors and beneficiaries.
Local partner li willing bloody land bloody understand them. You want them to say on our partner capacity will get around look this program must come up so that the future can but get to implement them cash transfer without collecting by Oxfam staff.
To be honest, by me must salute to Oxfam in the sense that you've like a capacity after you've learned an item, but you've like can build them with all partners. And by me one way forward blomivla in terms of any disaster. For sure, Adra by me use some block cash. Look, blomi, by me kutumas from you, me learn from each other. You me everyone share and ting. So that you must have a grow in Vanuatu, blow you me. And Vanuatu, you must have a one resilience country. Look, that you make a disaster come every year also.
This is definitely something that DFAT would invest in again in the future. We've seen that it worked. We've seen that it gets money quickly to vulnerable communities while also providing economic stimulus benefits. And it's cheaper to run than lots of other programs. So for us, it's a win-win-win in terms of a modality to quickly support vulnerable people.
Thank you, moderator, for the video. I know it's a long video, but yes, the link will be shared with everyone. Just to add in my conclusion, I would like to draw to our attention that unbroadcast is just a tool of delivering assistance after a disaster. Referring to the first video that was played before the first plenary, it is a tool that cannot fight climate change. But referring to the documentary film, that the 15-minute documentary film, Unblockers offers a rapid delivery platform to mitigate the impacts of the extreme climate events due to climate change. The use of the digital technology to deliver in the Unblockers model is essential as we move into an increasingly digitized world, where we know for a fact that digital networks and access are expanding and are also less vulnerable to the impacts of severe disasters compared to the conventional bricks and mortar infrastructure. The community-based transaction model that Unblockers uses, it is inclusive of the local businesses and communities, which has been used to accelerate the recovery after climate-related and or other disasters. To amplify in this space, as climate change accelerates, organizations like Oxfam and the communities which we serve will face more severe and frequent climate-related disaster events. Unblockers has been created as a preparedness and response tool to make sure that assistance is fast, timely, and inclusive so that affected people can recover quickly. In relation to disaster resilience and climate justice, it links human rights and development to achieve a human-centered approach, safeguarding the rights of the most vulnerable people and sharing the patterns and benefits of climate change and its impacts equitably and fairly through the choice and dignity that is given by to the beneficiaries. By delivering in this manner, Unblockers is an innovative tool to assist in building resilience collectively by ensuring that communities are able to assist assistance to recover in a way that is empowering and dignified. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. Welcome any question. Over to you, moderator.
Thank you so much, Kalua, for that intervention, highlighting the critical need to be innovative in our approach in finding solutions to the climate and COVID-19 crisis. You know, as earlier alluded, COVID-19 has really brought to the fore the inequalities that exist because of failed systems, and one of them is our economic systems, systems that really puts profit over people. And it's great to see that we have our friends in Vanuatu who are working with communities to try and address the system's failure through innovative technologies such as blockchain. So thank you once again, Kalua, for sharing that video and for those statements with us. I'm sure by now you may have questions and comments that you want to share and address with our speakers, our first plenary, as well as our second plenary that we've just heard from, and that is from Kalua. And so we are now going to open the forum to questions and answers. We have about 10 minutes for this, and so we will try our best to get all of your questions. Please feel free to post your questions or comments on the chat. And if you would like to speak, just press on that hand raised button, and we'll give the time to you to speak and ask your question. Vinaka.
I have a question.
Thank you, Mary. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mary McCormick. I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of MBI Media, and we're based in Los Angeles, California. One of the questions I have is that we actually do community engagement in a variety of ways on a variety of projects. And one of the things that we use typically, especially now in COVID-19, that a lot of companies are needing more visual communications. The video we've seen today is fabulous. You guys have done a wonderful job, and those are great videos. But my question is, you know, to the speakers today, what is the most helpful to you if you are trying to design a communications plan, a outreach plan, or a marketing plan? What have you found to be the most effective in two ways: locally, to your local community, and then in the broader sense to allow other people to not only understand the program that you're implementing, but in addition to that, how can they help you? So I'm just curious as to the type of tools that you find most effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for that question. We'll now give it to the speakers. Kalua, do you want to have a go with that question?
Yes, thank you, Mary, for the question. I'll give some answers to that in regards to the context of Pacific and Vanuatu. There are some key learnings that have been considered, especially when engaging with community. So we have to make sure we have clear, direct, and honest communication is the key of effective mobilization and community engagement. And also community awareness before the disaster or response activities is also essential, whereas it is important so much to involve local authorities as allies, example, the provincial area secretaries, the chiefs, church leaders, and other local authorities. So for the self-capacity around this program, that's the reason why we have to have continuum approach to keep on sharing that learning in order to build our capacity also, as it is an innovative approach that we use that helps our building our knowledge around the use of the innovative technology. I think that's from my side. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kalua, for addressing that question. Does anyone else in the team, maybe the ladies, would like to speak from their perspective? What is most helpful to you in terms of the communication tools that you use to amplify your messaging? So ladies, Anna or our friends from Solomon Islands? Yes, Anna?
Thank you, Mary, for that question. With my understanding, some of the things that I find as a barrier with getting my message out there is the language. So because English is not quite very understandable for, especially for young people my age, whom I'm trying to get the message across to, it's very hard to explain and get my message in regard to the climate crisis, having scientific terms and getting the young ones to really understand the issue is, I think for me, that would be an issue. And I think my approach to it is I use our own language, our Tongan language, and that simply helps, but as well as using and utilizing social media platforms. I have also found that for young people who I'm trying to get the message across to, it is very important that we engage them in a way that they are interested in. And I mean that by using some of the traditional methods of having trainings and stuff. Some of the times it's not very effective for young people because we have different preferences. So for young people as my age, we are more into, social media platforms. We have TikToks and stuff. So I'm trying to utilize those tools into getting my messages across. And although it's not perfect yet, but I'm still working on how to utilize those spaces in which youths are more into, to get the message across through there. So I hope that answers your question. Please forgive me if it doesn't.
No, it does. And even here in the States, that's key. I think also maybe the possibility of communicating through infographics or visual communications, which is a little easier to understand versus the complex scientific terminology that is also sometimes quite confusing. So, the simpler sometimes is always the better.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mary, for highlighting those key messages in terms of us trying to amplify our messaging in different spaces, whether it's regional, national, or international space. The issue of communication and using the right tool at the right time is very critical in amplifying our message. So thank you so much, Mary, for that. Is there any other, are there any other questions from the space? We have about 11 minutes. We have a lot of time for questions and comments. So if there's any other comments, please feel free to share. We've got a question in the comment section. I think this is to Kalua. If it's unblocked cash to be replicated in the Pacific, what enabling environment was needed to make unblocked cash successful?
Thank you for the question, Filippo. With the unblocked cash, there are 4 preconditions for implementing an effective cash transfer. So that is why with the video that has been shown, we implement the unblocked cash just in the 3 provinces, because due to the feasibility study that we did early in 2018, we found that those 4 preconditions were highly in those 3 provinces to implement an effective cash transfer. So to implement an effective cash transfer in the areas that we work especially in the Pacific, we have to have 4 preconditions. So one is the beneficiary need. That's something that we know definitely after disaster people were in need for relief. And one is the community and political acceptance. That is, they must accept cash, since it is a sensitive issue. They must accept the use of cash to be flow in the communities. And one is the operational conditions. So that is one of the challenges in Vanuatu, where this is a bit expensive for operational, especially around roads and especially the networks, which is a challenge to get to the other 4 provinces. So, and the other one is the market conditions. We have to have a successful market in place to implement a effective cash transfer. So those are the 4 preconditions to enabling a cash transfer to be rolled out in an environmental context we work in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kalu. I hope that answers your question, Filippo. There is another question on the chat, and that is from Christine. How sustainable is unblocked chain in terms of continued financing, especially given the increased frequency of extreme events projected for the future? Kalua, I think this one is for you again.
Yes, I think, thank you for the question, Christine. Talking around the sustainability of the unblockers with the infographic that we set monthly and the impact stories that we've collected, that's something that triggers our tona, especially around the importance of this program. So as an example, we already completed the response, but the donors, they still want us to maintain this, especially the capacity with the partners. So the funding is, they gave additional funding to increase the capacity of the partners based on the impact and the infographics that we collect monthly to sustain the ongoing of the program, especially in the nearly in country.
Thank you, Kalua, for addressing that. I guess in short, if in case of increased frequency of disasters in Vanuatu, do you think unblocked cash chain is still the way forward?
Yes, I think it is like with the end-line result that we collected, most of the partners, most of the 98% of the beneficiaries and people were satisfied with this process as taking it forward in the future. And that is something we also advocate currently to the government. Especially we are planning to influence the government to use this as a new tool of approach instead of giving in-kind and material things to the beneficiaries, because we want the choice dignity to be given by to the most vulnerable.
Thank you so much, Kalua, for that. We'll take one more question or comment, and then we will close. There's no further, I guess there's no further questions or comments. Well, thank you so much, colleagues and friends, for participating and sharing in this session. Your discussions and reflections will help shape our ideas and vision for a climate just and sustainable future that is rooted on feminist principles, as well as innovative principles in trying to address the climate crisis. And we hope that some of the suggestions, as we were speaking, our rapporteur has been taking notes, and we hope that some of the key messages and suggestions from this platform will be pivoted at some of the high-level side event meetings in Glasgow later this week or next week. And so before leaving us, I just want to end today with a quote from President Joe Biden at the World Leaders Summit on Monday. He said, quote, "This decade will determine the answer. This is the decisive decade. We can keep the 1.5-degree goal if we come together with determination, ambition, and innovation," end quote. And I'm glad, ladies and gentlemen, that the Pacific is paving the way in testing out new approaches, learning and unlearning in the process for a better world for our generation. And so on behalf of the organizers of the event, GIZ and ADB and Oxfam in the Pacific, I would like to convey my heartfelt Vinaka Wakalevu and appreciation to everyone. Have yourselves a wonderful day ahead. Vinaka.